What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another episode of the Behind the Mic podcast, peeling back the curtain inside the sports media industry. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, not only MassLive's Chris Cotillo, Red Sox reporter, but also a UNC alum. So, fittingly, we put this together after the Patriots drafted UNC quarterback Drake Maye with the third overall pick. So, Chris, thanks for joining me. And before we get into the nitty gritty about your life in sports media, what was your reaction to the Patriots drafting your alumni's quarterback this weekend?
I've been, as you noted, I've liked every single tweet about the possibility for the last year or so. I kind of figured it was going to happen throughout the day. I was reading everything, hoping that Daniels didn't fall and just, basically hoping they weren't going to surprise us with McCarthy or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was in Cleveland with the Sox, was flying home 8:30 flight. So I thought it was going to be perfect. I could actually not be on my phone at all, not have any teasers or anything, and just watch it on the JetBlue flight with those TVs that are the size of a fingernail. And we got on. It was me and a few other people from the beat: Pete Abe, Julian McWilliams, Rob Bradford, and we kind of all got on knowing we were going to just watch the draft for the hour and a half of the flight, and saw Daniels go to Washington. And they came over and said, we're having a technical difficulty up here, so we're gonna need to power off the plane. It was flashing the Patriots pick is in, and I was just like, this is perfect, laughing. Yep. And so I was able. You never have service when you're sitting there about to take off on your phone, but I somehow did. So I fired up the ESPN app and got to watch the end of Goodell announcing the pick, and we were sitting in the pitch black, and we were, dead silent. And in row C3, there was me banging the wall, screaming, "Let's fucking go!" And they drafted him. So
I was going to say, you'll remember that one forever.
Yeah, that might have been startling for everyone else. And then the TVs came back on. We could watch, so I could watch now on the TV the kind of the analysis, and then they announced we're going to shut this down for 10 more minutes because the issue was not working, and they booted us off the plane, canceled it, and we had to spend the night in Cleveland. I got to watch the rest of the draft, but I was on that plane for 15 minutes, and it was right in that window where Goodell was walking out. I was happy, obviously. Yep. I'm glad I got to see it. It was against all odds. I had to really work for it, but I think I might have scared a few people around me.
That's perfect.
People have already said that he hasn't even played a snap yet, and I'm already intolerable. Wearing a Carolina shirt around Fenway the other day, a lot of people were, saying, "Drake Maye, let's go, let's go."
Yeah.
So it's good for me. It gets me back in.
That's a good story. Like you said, you've been waiting for this for freaking months now. And then of course that happens on the flight. So no better way to remember it. So, all right, Drake Maye's here. But you're a Red Sox reporter, Chris. So you've been at MassLive for, a couple years now, but we start this off the podcast with something I'm calling resume time, which is basically just the floor is yours. You've had a unique, obviously, I guess, upbringing, if you will, in sports media that I've, learned about over the years. But can you just take us through, start to finish, where you really fell in love with, being in this industry up until where you are today at MassLive?
Yeah, it's been, obviously, I think, as I talk about it when people ask, it's definitely the mix of the traditional and the non-traditional start. Yeah. I was a huge sports fan growing up, Red Sox and Patriots, especially as a kid, and loved the business of baseball, loved the trade deadline, the winter meetings, all that type of stuff. And I just, kind of figured that, I was going to get into it in some way, shape, or form. And the calling was, I guess, louder once I got into high school. I started an anonymous Twitter account, a burner before burners were cool, at Trade Deadliner. The thing that I think, separated me at that time was I was doing aggregation that nobody else was really doing, and I was a high schooler, and by aggregation,
can't find that anymore, can you?
No, I was all, but I mean, it was legitimately probably plagiarism without me knowing that. As a 15, 16-year-old under a burner account at Trade Deadliner, may rest in peace.
Is that your same account now, or is it a
Yeah.
different account? Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So I
fun.
switched the name.
Yep.
Got working for SB Nation, MLBDailyDish.com. And basically, tried to ride that wave for as long as I could part time. And was lucky enough to work there, SB Nation, MLB Daily Dish, for my senior year of high school. I broke a couple big MLB stories that kind of put my name on the map back then. I was in 2013. Then went to, so that's kind of the non-traditional part of it. Went to Carolina, obviously. I'm just excited about Drake Maye because I like his arm strength. And spent 4 years there in journalism school. Never wrote for the school paper. Never did anything with Carolina athletics other than drink and go to the games and cheer. And just did the whole, Daily Dish MLB Insider thing on the side while I was there. And to me, I think it was a really cool experience of like really living it day to day and trying to be like this quasi MLB insider while also learning how to do it, in
Now,
person
do
throughout
people
the
know who
day.
you were at that point, like on campus, or like had you not
No, I
like
mean,
blown up into somebody yet?
no, I mean, it's not
Okay.
like there's any fame.
No, I
You
know,
know,
but sometimes
it's,
if you
yeah, I
recognize
mean,
names or something.
there were some baseball fans that like
Okay,
knew what I was doing,
gotcha.
but I think it was funny with journalism professors. They'd be like, hey, you got to put your laptop away during class. We're going to learn how to break news today. It's like, well, I'm waiting on a scoop.
Yeah,
Like that's kind of defeats the purpose
right.
of all that. So. It was cool to kind of blend those couple things. And then right after graduation, started working for MassLive in May of 2018. Covered that year where they won. Obviously, I thought, this is easy. They just win every game, and you write about
Yeah.
how good everybody on the team is. And it's not been like that since. But definitely, uh, kind of a weird, different type of thing because I just tried to, like I basically set out to be competing with Ken Rosenthal and Jeff Passan when I was like 15 or 16
Mhm.
and realized immediately that you're going to get beat like 999 times out of 1,000. I was just lucky enough to get a couple things with some really good people that helped me along the way with it, and that helped kind of establish. And the other thing, I was literally 100% breaking news back then, trying to be the first to tweet something. I was really working for Twitter, while getting paid by SB Nation.
Right.
Not a ton. It was part time. And then in college, really learned like you can't. And a conversation with Rosenthal actually helped me realize that, he was like, you can't just be a newsbreaker on Twitter and make a career out of this. You got to write features and do interviews and, having the credential, obviously, and the access help with that and
Right.
doing a pod and all the different pieces of it that you kind of have to do to be in it now. So that was the basis, but it's a lot different now.
So you mentioned during that covering the Red Sox starting in 2018, they win the whole thing, best team ever. And since then, as we know, the Red Sox have kind of they're in this downward spiral. They get rid of the big three and Mookie and Xander, and they keep Devers, but you get the gist, right? And so you've done a good job, I think, of being super, frankly, critical of this team, while also continuing to build relationships and be on the inside and break news and get features and things like that, right? And so how do you balance that? Because being in the clubhouse every day while also frankly saying like, look, they need to figure this shit out. Like I'm curious how you balance that and where that comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, especially on Twitter, mistake the job for you're supposed to be promoting the team that you cover. You're supposed to be a fan, because I think that line has been blurred. The job is to be very objective and to be kind of the liaison between the fans and the team, the ownership, which is impossible for us because they never speak. The coaches, the players, all that type of stuff. Like it's to call it as we see it. Like if I get a lot of crap over the winter because I reported the fact that they were telling free agents that they had to, spend, or they had to shed payroll before adding any. And to me, that was, I think, kind of like a very, very damning moment where, these Red Sox cannot go out and pursue a free agent they want because they have to shed payroll. Why is that? They're 20 million under the. So did it make the organization look cheap? Yeah. Did it make them look horrible? Yes. Was that what they were doing? Yeah. I mean, the job is to bring the facts to it.
Right.
And I think, I benefit from having the base of people around the game, not just with the Red Sox, that I talked to and used as sources and built really strong relationships with during my time at SB Nation and trying to cover the whole league because I wasn't just covering the Red Sox. And so can check in with those people, an executive here. Hey, what are you hearing on the Sox? Be like, they're just shedding money, like they're trying to cut payroll. They're gonna, right. And so I think people, when you do something like that, you kind of stick your neck out. And working with Sean McAdam and Chris Smith, those guys hear things too, and we, especially Sean and I, talk about it on the pod or write about it and co-byline stuff, and we're hearing different. Sean heard from very well placed source Jordan Montgomery's way out of their price range, and people, because it seems so ridiculous with what the Red Sox should be, are like, that's just not true. I don't want to believe it, so it's not true. Right. And it's like, no, I mean, we're not making this up. So people, I think, for the last few months said that our coverage is a very negative spin. I mean, because we correctly pointed out they weren't going to sign any of the big free agents and that they were trying to
look at where we are, Chris.
Right. I mean, and they've played expectations, and the rotation's been great, and there are things to celebrate and be happy about if you're a Red Sox fan. But I think I guess at the end of the day, the win for me is having somebody email me or tweet on any given day, on one day, hey, you are the most negative person. You hate the Red Sox. Why do you hate the Red Sox so much? And then the next day, based on something I say or write, you're the biggest homer ever. You're so biased. You love the team so much. And it's like, if I'm getting both sides of that, I think I'm doing something right. All of us are in this job because you're providing, that balance. Are there times where, you feel like you're on one side leaning a little too far or not? Maybe. I mean, I think in the offseason, again, there wasn't much to be positive about where, fans expected full throttle. They didn't get that. And so being the one to tell them, hey, they're interested in this free agent, you call, whoever it is involved in the process, that, yeah, that's not going to happen. And then report that back. Like I was on Imanaga being a long shot. People were like, why do you have to be that guy to tear everything you do? Like, I don't take pleasure out of it. If someone had said, yeah, they're close to a deal with Imanaga, I would have tweeted that too. The job is the truth. And I think, I've seen in the 10 years since I've been doing this in different roles, like people have this mentality, like if it's not exactly what I want to hear, then no, it's not true. I'm sure you and people on the Patriots beat people who didn't want them to draft May would be like, nope, that's not true. They're going to get Daniels, or like whatever it is. Because I wanted that guy. It's like, no, it's reporting. It's not, me filling a narrative. So it's, as you know, it's a tough balance of trying to be, critical and facing the people, every day. I know. Obviously players follow. I think if you just stick to the facts, you're safe and you don't make it personal. Like the fact is that John Henry has not spoken to anybody in a press conference setting since they traded Mookie 4+ years ago. And the fact is his job is to be more accountable than that. The fact is that the media guide says the Red Sox are a public trust and they want to be transparent with their fans. They're not. And so it's not me going out on a limb or doing a shtick when I call them out for not being accountable. I think the fans generally agree with me on that one, that they want to hear from him too. So I think there's, everything that I think reporters put out, there's something behind it. We're having conversations with, whether it be players, coaching staff, agents, executives with other teams every single day. That informs the coverage. It's not just, analysis shooting from the hip. And that, I think if you have a basis in fact in reporting, then I think you're always good to kind of do whatever. Now, next off season, maybe I'm the guy that breaks that the Red Sox sign Juan Soto and, acquire Bryce Harper, and they are going to put their payroll up to 450.
I wouldn't get too excited for that.
No, I wouldn't either. But if those are the facts at play, that's the job, is to report them. They just have been disappointing facts for the fan base for a while. I think the best example was in October of the previous offseason. It was Devers' birthday, and they went down. This was a huge thing on Twitter. And they went down to the Dominican, or Eddie Romero, the assistant GM, went down to the Dominican. And literally to visit Rafi on his birthday. And he was down there doing some other business, went to Rafi's birthday party, and literally brought him a birthday cake from the Red Sox. It was like a sign of like, hey, you're our superstar now, maybe kind of a sign of goodwill before contract negotiations. But there was no offer. There was nothing talked about. And I heard this from like 5 different people. Like, it was just a kind of a, hey, how are you doing? Visit, check in to start the offseason. But we didn't talk numbers or anything. And I mean, people who would really be in the know. And there were some reports floating around that, with the birthday cake, they brought this big offer, and he didn't sign until January,
There's a
February.
contract in the second layer of the cake or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Right. So, but there's a lot of reporting, like people speculating, like, well, they definitely brought a big offer. They're about to get a deal done. And I was one of the people, Alex Spear also was like, no, pump the brakes. It's not close. I mean, they did obviously get it done. And people were livid. People were, some of the shit I got in DMs and emails, pissed, because they were pissed about the fact of the matter. They were pissed about the fact that Devers was not going to sign a deal that day. And like, it's the shooting the messenger thing, which I think has really increased the last few years for whatever reason. But again, if you have the facts and you're well sourced, like, you're kind of protected. It doesn't matter what people think, whether it's, positive or negative. You just can't be wrong.
Right.
So that's always the key.
And it's funny you mentioned you're either a homer or you absolutely hate the team. There's no in between.
Right,
You
exactly.
can say one thing and people spin it into completely different sides. Like it happens with the Red Sox, obviously, but it's happened recently with, obviously the Patriots and what happened with Bill and Robert and now Elliot Wolf running the front office. It's like, it's really, it doesn't matter what you write, report, or even like opinionate about. It's whatever someone wants to hear is what they're going to hear. So
exactly.
It's good to know that it doesn't just happen with the Patriots. It's all over the place. But
yeah, it is. And I mean, that's I think in the area we cover sports, it's these people are, somewhat naturally negative. And then I think, also spoiled by the recent success. It's not like,
for sure.
And I'm this way as a Carolina basketball fan too. Like, if they don't win the title, like, I don't know, they get to the Final Four, it's not a successful year for a lot of places. It would be. Yeah, right. The Patriots, Super Bowl win or bust, Red Sox World Series win or bust. I mean, people look at the Celtics, I think rightly so, right now that way. Like, if they lose in the finals, the season's a failure. And like, if you take a step back and think you're, the second team out of 30, whatever it is, like, pretty good year. But here are the standards different. And so I think that's what makes the job fun, but it's also like makes it intense when you're kind of in the heat of the moment trying to bring things reporting wise.
So you're a reporter, you're a writer for MassLive, obviously, but you also you teach at BC and you run this workshop that I actually took last year, which if you haven't heard of it, or if you're an aspiring journalist, I highly recommend, because it gives a lot of tips and tricks as to sort of how to separate yourself in the field. But so first of all, where the heck do you find the time to get all that done? But second of all, where did you did you all of a sudden find like a passion or a love to like try and also teach what you've learned, or did that just happen organically and you sort of ran with it since then?
Yeah, I think in 2019, 2020, around then, I was just getting a lot of calls all the time, as one of the younger people in the media full time, of people who were in high school or college looking to break in, and I would get a ton of emails like, how do I do this? How do I get into this? How do I? And I basically was saying the same stuff on every phone call or saying the same stuff in every email. And it's a lot of stuff that, I based a workshop off of. And the middle of, I think, the late summer of 2020, I thought like, maybe there's a way to like, make this into an actual program. And I started kind of writing those ideas down on the vaunted long 75-page PDF that, comes with the workshop, about just, it's not, as more than anybody, it's not the textbook. This is how to write a lead, and this is how to it's kind of the stuff behind the scenes of how to use social media, how to report things that are hidden in plain sight, how to go about interactions, like what to say in a DM to somebody you're trying to talk to for source reasons, or some techniques on how to write a feature story, but how to gain the trust of players to do that, and that's stuff like that. It's the stuff that kind of beyond the classroom, I think, is kind of the hope. Because with no offense to the alma mater I love and breathe, like the best experience and what I learned the most my whole career is from, doing things, sitting in a classroom and learning media law is great. But, during that time when I was at Carolina, I'd have an agent calling me and threatening to sue me about a piece, and going through like realizing here are the actual rules. Like that was scary as shit, but it was valuable to learn, because, everything's kind of like, everything's fictional in the classroom world or simulated, and
Mhm.
when you're doing it, as like it's the real world and things pop up. And I remember my first interview ever was with Mark Cuban, which is very intimidating, and I was trying to I was at the Sloan Sports Conference, and I was trying to film him with my phone, my hand shaking. He got pissed at a question I asked, and I was like mortified to never do an interview again. The key is start smaller. Don't start with like one of the 10 most famous billionaires in the
Yeah,
world.
right.
So I've hated Shark Tank ever since. Is the moral of that story. But the I think the workshop to me is just a place where I've been able to kind of condense all that stuff that I learned over time and share it with people. I think the cool part about it is it's a lot of people in high school and college or right out of college, but it's a lot of people who are, hey, I'm 70 and I just retired after a long career in this field, but I've always wondered how it works, and maybe I'll start a blog. Or it's a 12, 13-year-old who's already got a blog and already kicking ass. And I've had a 13-year-old beat me on a Red Sox story that took the workshop and stuff like that. And that class really became the impetus for the BC class of
Mhm.
having a connection over there in the communications department. It's it's been fun to kind of do that in a real classroom setting. And so it's a lot, especially during the season. Like today's a Sox off day and I have a ton to grade and I have class tonight. It's
And you
class
got to
at
talk to
7.
me on this damn podcast.
Right, yeah, well, I got a lot going on, but I just embraced the Belichick no days off with
There
that.
you go.
But it's fun to do it. It's different. It's a different skill set. But I think I learned from the experiences too of talking to different people and what have worked for them in the workshop and different things, and what has worked for other people as they've started their careers. And maybe a middle school kid or a high school kid will be like, hey, well, I find a great way to connect with players is I go on their Twitch streams, and like something I've never done. Like
Right.
it's cool to see kind of different. I think that's how that kid broke it. That guy was streaming and he commented, "Hey, you signing with the team?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to the Red Sox. I'm flying to Fort Myers tomorrow." And like that's on their Twitch stream. That's how
Yep.
they break a story. So it's as I always say, the beauty of the industry is that you don't have to have a certain degree or a certain license or pass a test to do it. The work just has to be good. You have to stand out. And so that's kind of what I kind of preach in that thing, for lack of a better term. Um, and I think, it's just pointing people in the right direction. It's not like I'm, creating the
Right.
next wave. The skills are already there for all these people. It's just like the best ways to apply it and the best ways and the most efficient ways to do it. And that's usually, you know, always finding stuff that's not well covered, and finding, 30 different ways to cover it and bring people something that's not out there.
It's definitely, as I said before, an informative course that I took just before I was I really started trying to get into into the industry full time. So
Hmm.
again, if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. And um, one thing you taught us in that course, you told a story about a lesson you learned on Twitter, and
Yeah.
trying to have fun versus being professional. So I thought it was hilarious, but it's also really it's true in the fact that you got to kind of you'll balance what you do on Twitter. So the floor is yours to tell that story, because I kind of just want to hear it again.
Yeah. I mean, I had, in the summer of 2022, I went to Houston with the Red Sox, and for the trade deadline, they made a lot of moves. Christian Vasquez got traded, a lot of long sleepless nights. And when I flew home, I was really run down, felt horrible, and I tested positive for COVID, the only time I ever had it. And so I was not going to Kansas City on the road trip, but I was supposed to cover at least part of it remotely from here. And I just felt horrible. I slept all day, woke up for like the first inning of the first game, and the Royals made like 4 errors and wild pitches and blunders and botched rundowns and all this stuff. And I fired off a 2-second tweet that was, the Red Sox are going to benefit from playing a little league team for the next 4 days. Um, and I went back to bed. Red Sox, I think, won the game, but then they lost the next three. And the
To a little league
whole
team.
Kansas City metropolitan area basically sicked themselves on that tweet, and they were absolutely livid because big market bully thinking he can take a shot at a small market team. That, come to find out, I've been covering a small market team all along, the Red Sox, but the Royals are outbidding them now for Seth Lugo. But
Yeah.
the like it was just like nonstop of why do you have to be like that? I had a very prominent MLB insider text me a screenshot of a player had texted him, "I can't believe a writer would say something this stupid. Does he know how, impact or how good you have to be to make the majors? This is so insulting to call a major league team a little league team." I wasn't making a generalization about 162 games. I just saw one inning. I was like, oh,
Right.
well, this shouldn't be hard for the Red Sox. I went back to sleep in my COVID fog, whatever. But it went super widespread. A lot of people in baseball saw it. A lot of people, and my biggest fear is the Red Sox sign one of these. When Bobby Witt Jr. is a Red Sox in 12 years, and he hates me automatically because he remembers that tweet from 2022. It was just, I had to go on Kansas City radio and explain myself. And it became this huge bit. And so, we had the choice to either get tight and try to dig in, or laugh at yourself and be self-aware. And so I donated to a Royals charity and said, "Thank you, Kansas City, for all the fun," and went on a couple of the radio stations. They were trying to bait me into talking more shit about Kansas City, which is a fine town. And they were like, either, "Chris, what do you prefer? Let me guess. Would you rather have clam chowder or Kansas City barbecue? I bet that's not a hard question for you homer." And I was like, I got a good one here. I have a crippling shellfish allergy, so I'll take your barbecue all day long. Awesome. And they're like, "Oh, okay." It's like, Patrick Mahomes is great. Yeah. What do I want to say? George Brett. So I haven't been back there since. I'm a little afraid. But that was, in reality, like I said, it's a good, it was a 1-second tweet that was harmless and innocuous, but it fired up a whole city. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, I've had a lot of moments where, is this quirky, sarcastic tweet worth, the 75 likes when it could go the other way? Right. Sometimes I decide yes. Most of the time I, decide no. I think I do need to tone it down when Carolina's playing Duke or big basketball games and stuff, because, the Red Sox hire a GM who went to Duke in a few years. And I have tweets up that say, Duke sucks all the time. It's going to be, but that part is hard to let go. But I can be nicer on Kansas City.
Well, it's funny too, you mentioned that, because part of being, part of frankly garnering an audience is being a reporter and having good content. But it's also, especially
the other part's just Squidward memes, right?
It's just, well, that's what I was just gonna say, right? You have to humanize yourself too, in a way. Right. So you have fun with it. I've obviously taken the SpongeBob route, like you just mentioned, but part of it too is being a fan, I guess, and sometimes, and interacting with people, and not just being frankly, a hard ass reporter that you can get in this industry wherever it is, right? And so, but then towing that line where it does it go too far, or is this professional? Is something that again, when I tweet Squidward with the Patriot, I mean, like you said, right. It's funny, and sometimes it's like, all right, what the hell is this kid doing? So that's a a good story, like you said, to put it into perspective. So you mentioned breaking news, you mentioned columns. You and Sean have your Fenway Rundown podcast at Mass Live. All of it, everything you do. What is your number one favorite part of working in sports media?
That's a great question. I mean, in terms of the actual, workflow, I think, at my core, I love the breaking news part still, because it feels like there's a rush, a competition, even small things like we had the Garrett Cooper trade on Saturday first, and to break something and have, all of Red Sox Nation and Cubs fans react to it and like, oh, they're making a trade. And I'm the first person in the world to put it out there. I still find value in that, just because it's such a competitive industry. But that, I think, is fleeting. I've found that more as time goes on. You're not going to remember who broke the Garrett Cooper trade in about 10 seconds after it's done. And I think, to me now, it's the real feature storytelling that I think is super valuable. I have in March, I think I wrote what is my kind of favorite, and favorite's probably not the right word, most impactful, meaningful story I've written on Garrett Whitlock losing his brother last September. And just, being able to tell the story of, a family tragedy and how the Red Sox rallied around him, and getting a player to, trust that I'll tell the story the right way. Obviously Whitlock's a really good pitcher and a really good guy. And
Mhm.
when he went through that last year, it was horrible. And being able to kind of tell the human side of things, I think, is the best part of the job. It's not always something you can do on day to day. It's a lot of right now injuries and good pitching performances and roster moves and all that stuff. But
Sure.
like I'm not going to remember that Emmanuel Valdez struck out 3 times every day the last week. In 5 years, I'm going to remember the Whitlock story.
Right.
Jaron Duran opening up about his mental health a couple of years ago, which really opened a very large, still going conversation on that topic with the Red Sox. Those types of things, like you feel like those are kind of the once every couple of years stories that, like if I get a text about a trade, like I get the text, I send the tweet, it's a 2-minute process. Where you do something like those features, it's a month or 3 weeks, and there's a lot of editing that goes into it. And it's a lot of, making sure every word is correct and really kind of dedicating yourself to it. So those are the best. I think just generally, like, favorite parts of the job, the travel I still like, just being in different places. There's sometimes like when your flight gets canceled the other night that it becomes a little arduous, but being able to go to different ballparks and go to different places. I've been to 28 of them now at 28 years old, which is pretty good, and 2 to go. And I just feel like I've had a lot of opportunities like that because of this, and I still, call me a homer for this take, but just I still find it cool to walk into Fenway every day and call that a workplace. And last night leaving at 12:05 because MassLive's the hardest working people on the beat. Chris Smith and I were the last 2 people left in the press box, but just being a kid, kind of. But like the one of 3-4 people in the ballpark in a place like that, like completely empty. Like it's really cool full, but it's really cool empty too. So I like calling that place the office. I know it's very cliche and tired, but I do. And that's, the team can be winning or losing, but just being in there and again, 5 hours after the game ends or whatever it is, 3 hours after the game ends, I find those moments to be really cool.
Yeah. Least favorite part. What sucks? It's like, all right, dream job, great. You get to cover the Red Sox. Like you said, you're in Fenway at 3 a.m. and there's one peanut guy cleaning up shit. But what's the worst part? What don't you like?
I think sometimes the work-life balance and just the unhealthy nature of like any professional beat for sure, but the baseball beat is a grind because there's so many games and they're like think about I don't get up at the same time every day. I don't go to bed at the same time every day. This week is like off day, 7:00 game, 7:00 game, 1:30 game. Then I'm going to Portland for some prospect stuff. Like my road trip I just did, the games were at 6:40, 4, 1:30, off day, and then 6:10, 6:10, 1:10. It's like just completely, you're totally thrown out of the rhythm. And then trying to make, early flights, late flights to get out of there after an afternoon game. I think these types of complaints always fall on deaf ears when people, fans hear it because it's a dream job and it definitely is. But going through the logistics of it, like it's not, the team has it great. They get to, the plane's waiting for them when they get done with the game. They get on the plane, they go home. We have to, obviously fly separate and book separate and all that stuff. And it does become, kind of grueling. We're at Fenway 4 hours before first pitch every day, and leave probably 2 or 3 hours after. And that doesn't include, like yesterday, for example, it's a 7:00 game. We had to get there at 3, but they make a roster move at 10 a.m. It's like, oh, we got to write off that. And then we get, so, and Sean and I do the pod a lot of mornings before we go. So there are, you get worn down, pretty quickly. I think that's the benefit for us. We had 2 guys on the beat forever. Now we have 3, being able to split it up and take off days. Because if you try to do 162, it would be insane. And,
on a regular game day, how many stories do you write off one game?
Depends on how many of us are there for Mass Live. On the road, probably 5 to 7. Wow. At home, there's usually 2 of us, sometimes all 3 of us. Yesterday I did 2 pregame, the game story, and 2 postgame. So I did 5 even yesterday, and Smith did 3 or 4 or 5. So it kind of depends on, what's going on. Yesterday there was kind of a lot with roster moves and walk off and Yoshida injury and all that type of stuff. So, but that's the MassLive model, just kind of at as many cracks at it as we can, and that's I think what makes it successful.
Definitely. All right, before we let you go, before we get into our fast 5 to finish rapid fire questions, just you have accomplished clearly, as we just talked about for over a half hour, a ton in this industry already. What's next for Chris Cotillo? Is there any, not, I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel, but like, is there anything else you want to accomplish and kind of, go from here now that you're at MassLive and doing this full time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to think in those terms of long term or what I want to do next. Like, I think I got into that a little bit early in my career. And for example, throughout college, I didn't want to be on a beat. I wanted to cover baseball nationally because I thought, I could just do this for SB Nation forever. And that opportunity went away right around graduation. I ended up at MassLive, and it's kind of a surprise to me. And I've loved every second of it. I've loved covering one team. I've loved, everything that goes into kind of focusing on 1 out of 30 instead of trying to find a minor league deal that I was going to say the Royals, but that would be an insult to Kansas City. We'll go with like the Padres, or making at 1 a.m. I think my advice always to people in the industry and is always taking it one day at a time. Like, how can I beat the competitors that are trying to do the same thing as me today? How can we put out the best Red Sox content there is today, the best Red Sox stories, the best Red Sox pod? And I think if you string enough of those days together, I think the rest of it, comes naturally. I also think that the industry, as we're often reminded pretty harshly, is unpredictable.
Yep.
Horrible decision by EI, by the way. But it's unpredictable, and so if you just string together every day and do your best work and try to stand out, even if you do, sometimes you get screwed as you learn. But it's just about putting yourself in the best position and trying to win every day. And I think the rest takes care of itself. So I don't know. Like, I love what I'm doing. I love working with Chris and Sean. Chris is a maniac in terms of workflow, and he's been there since before I was there. So we've been working the beat together now for the entire time, and just the ideas he comes up with, the amount that he works on the road when he puts out 80 stories in a 6-game span, whatever. Right. It's like just an animal in terms of how much stuff he puts out. Sean has been, covering the team since Babe Ruth, as I always say. And so he's,
good get by MassLive. MassLive's been killing it with that.
Yeah. We were great friends before we worked together, and I think that plays well on the pod. We have a lot of the same instincts about how to approach the job in terms of reporting and kind of looking for the story and different contexts that can, mix together for getting stuff. So like working with those guys and Matt Votor and basically, I always say everybody on MassLive's staff is unbelievable except Chris Mason. It's the one exception we have. But the whole group is excellent. I don't know why he's still there. That's because I always say that because when he joined MassLive in 19, a year after me, his intro tweet was, I'm so excited to work with the wonderful staff at MassLive and also Chris Cotillo. So we've been going back and forth on that for a while.
That's why Chris Mason's great. He's always got the one liner ready for you.
He does, yeah. And so I've loved the whole MassLive experience, so try to string together a lot more good days with them and keep it interesting on the Red Sox, even if they are cutting payroll.
Awesome. All right, fast five rapid fire questions to finish this thing off before we get you back to bed before another Red Sox string of events here, and before you get ready to watch Drake Maye at rookie minicamp in a couple weeks. So, number one, what's your favorite thing to do outside of sports?
Outside of sports, a great question. I'm kind of honestly just a sports dominated guy. Like I watch a lot of college hoops, watch a lot of college football, watch a lot of the NFL. I don't watch a ton of baseball outside of the Red Sox just because the schedule is not conducive to it. Spend time with family. I'm not big on like the quirky hobbies. I try golfing. Not that that's a quirky hobby, but I'm too bad to even consider it. I know that's also a sport.
I was just gonna say, I asked this to Tom Curran a couple weeks ago, and he said golf, and we're like, okay,
yeah, that is a sport. If my fatal flaw is being just unbelievably too mainstream on IPAs and watching football and hitting up the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I don't know if you have sponsors, and I shouldn't say that, whatever, but that's
too early for that.
It's pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah.
So I need to find something. I don't know. I got to find something else, but
That's
it's
all right.
just there's also there's no time. So
seriously,
what am I gonna do? Drake Maye highlights.
Perfect. All right, number 2. What is the most memorable moment you've had working in the sports media industry?
There's a lot. I covered while with SB Nation. I covered the first couple games of the ALCS at Fenway and the first couple games of the World Series in 2013. So I was there when Ortiz hit the home run with the jumping cop and all that. I was in high school, and that was my first time literally with a credential. So it's hard to beat that. I was there when they clinched it then and in 2018. So I saw the last 2 World Series titles in person. A weird, 2 other ones that really stand out. One, both totally, fanboy going crazy childhood moments. I covered Ortiz's Hall of Fame induction 2 summers ago. Matt Votora and I went up to Cooperstown for the weekend, and there was a very small, not open to the public Red Sox party where Ortiz invited all of his former teammates who were there. So it was like an 100-person party, and it was Johnny Damon, Trot Nixon, Derek Lowe, Pedroia, Euclid, the late Tim Wakefield, all these people, and it was I don't get starstruck by the current players because I see them every day, but those guys, to me, I was 8 and 04. That was crazy. And the other one on the Patriots side, in between when the great Andrew Callahan left MassLive and was replaced by Mason, they needed some help in that beginning of the 2019 season. The Red Sox weren't in the playoffs, so I did 2 or 3 Patriots games, and I was in the locker room at Gillette after a Thursday night game against the Giants that they won 37-0, and I was standing near the double doors, and they opened up, and there was Brady staring at me in the locker room after a game, which to me, when you're not around that at all, and you're it's the one cameo of you're 2 feet away from the guy you've watched literally. It was 5 when he took over and 25 when he left. That to me was I was red. I was seriously, I didn't know what to say. Nodded at me. So there's guys like that I think are or those moments to me are a lot. Those are kind of ingrained.
Yeah. All right, number 3. You mentioned advice earlier that you give to people. What is the best tip or advice you've gotten from somebody else working in sports?
Yeah, I think it's that Ken Rosenthal thing I mentioned earlier. Honestly, I asked him at one winter meetings, where do I go from here? I broke a couple big stories in 2013, as I said, and it's this is a lot more than the news breaking. You got to be well rounded, and that's kind of now the news breaking thing. I do it, but it's such a small part of the day to day. There's the interviews, the features, the columns, the analysis, the podcast, all the different things we do. You can't be a one-trick pony is basically what he said, and I really took that to heart. And 10 years later, it's been the most true piece of information I've ever gotten.
All right. And number 4, I know it's kind of hard because you've been doing this since you were 8 years old, but what would you be doing? What do you think you'd be doing for a profession if it wasn't in sports?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think I've always wanted to. I think my personality lends itself to it, the generally crotchety sports writer type. My dad's an accountant, so there's a family business there. So I guess maybe that. I always wanted to work in a front office. I know that's not too far off what I do now, but I always thought that would be cool. I grew up idolizing Theo Epstein and loving the whole business side of it. So maybe that, though the hours are longer and the pay is worse, which you can't say that about many fields, but I think it actually fits in that one.
Yeah. All right. Number 5, before we let you go, what is your favorite pizza topping?
I've always been just pepper and onion. I've always thought that was kind of the gold standard, but there's a chicken ranch pizza from College Pizza in the Fenway neighborhood that
Okay.
might have changed my opinion on that for good.
All right.
It's
We'll take it.
excellent.
Sounds good. All right, Chris, thanks so much for joining me. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. This was an awesome conversation. Before I close this out, again, if you haven't, or if you are a aspiring sports media journalist and you want to get into the field, I recommend checking out Chris's workshop. It was really helpful for me, and I know it's been really helpful for a bunch of other people. So, Chris, thanks so much for joining me. And for everyone else, if you haven't already, check out the Behind the Mic podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and follow us on social media at Behind Mic Pod. So that's it for episode 5, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.